Can you show you that statement?
Yes, the words in that letter sent to us by Graham Brady said the threshold of 15% of the Parliament
The future of Theresa May. Just run us through, because many people will just be switching on their TV screens as we speak now. Run us through what happens from this moment on now for Theresa May in terms of the next few hours.
Well, this is absolutely huge, Dan. In 12 hours' time, we'll find out if Theresa May is still basically going to be Prime Minister, if she can continue to occupy number 10 Downing Street. Her fate will be decided today, and the reason that is the case is there's going to be this vote of no confidence amongst her own MPs between 6 and 8 o'clock tonight. Now, what happened, just to give you the inner workings of this, is I saw the Chief Whip coming out of here around about 7:30. I called Graham Brady, that you're going to be talking to very, very soon, and he confirmed that the threshold had been reached. That's 48 letters from MPs calling for a vote of no confidence, and that's 15% of the parliamentary party. But in order for Theresa May to be ousted, you need to get half of the parliamentary party, 158 MPs, a much higher threshold. If her opponents, her internal opponents, fail to reach that threshold, fail to get 158, then she is safe for another year. She can decide when to leave. She can't be challenged again for another year, which is, of course, after Brexit date. The question, though, Dan, is whether there is, if you like, an unofficial threshold, whether she would feel if, say, 100 MPs didn't back her, whether it was time to step aside. That we will not get the answer to that until after 8 o'clock tonight. If, however, her opponents are successful, what happens then is that she is not allowed to take part in the subsequent leadership contest. The field is open to other candidates. There doesn't seem to be one clear successor. So what would happen is that MPs would whittle all this down to the final two, and then there would be a vote of the whole membership. And what Downing Street are saying today is that whole process could take until towards the end of January. It's worth asking Graham Brady about that. It could take till the end of January. We're supposed to be leaving the European Union at the end of March. That gives very little time for alternatives, so they're saying the risk of no deal, or possibly even no Brexit, would increase as a result of a leadership contest. That tends to suggest to me that she is, at least in the early stages of this, going to fight this and to argue that it's against the interests of the country for her to be ousted at this time. Now, she is going to have to make a speech to Conservative MPs tonight before the vote. That, I think, is the most important speech of her political career.
Eddie, you've spelled it out beautifully about how important a day this is for Theresa May. And do you think that time and the chronology that you just mentioned there about January and then what we know will happen at the end of March, do you think that might be what saves her from losing leadership of the Conservative Party tonight?
Well, that's right. What we do know, Dan, definitely, is that very few people are impressed so far with the deal that she negotiated with the European Union, especially this issue of what's called the Irish backstop, the way to avoid a hard border. In Ireland, 100 Conservative MPs told the BBC that they would not support her in that vote. But that's quite different from saying that they want to oust her as Prime Minister, because at the moment she's trying to go around European capitals, trying to get some more reassurance she can bring back to backbenchers. Some people are very sceptical she'll get the reassurance that's required, but she is going to a European Council tomorrow, no matter the result of the vote tonight. She won't be ousted immediately as Prime Minister, so she still has to do that. And what Downing Street is saying, this will undermine her at a crucial time in negotiations. So in fact, those who actually want to get a Brexit deal are undermining their own objectives. That's the argument that will be put tonight. The question is whether ultimately even some people who voted to remain think that perhaps somebody could do a better job in negotiations, or whether they feel that she has, to some extent run out of road, and that will be concentrating their minds. Also, this is politics, so although everyone will talk about the national interest, don't forget there's a whole range of different people who would rather be occupying number 10 Downing Street. So while they might be publicly supportive of the Prime Minister, it's a secret ballot tonight, and they might decide that they also think it's time for her to go. So we are not absolutely sure how this vote will go, or whether, as I say, she will think that even if she loses the support of 100 MPs, whether then it's worth continuing, even though technically, according to the rules, she has the ability to do so.
And this all coming at a time when Parliament normally slows down in the build-up to Christmas, and it's a huge vote for the Conservative Party today, and for the nation as well. I'm well aware, Ian, that this has all been thrown at you this morning, and things are happening and things are changing minute by minute and almost second by second at the moment. Do we know now what happens to the Prime Minister's day today? Because it's meant to be one of her, she had a huge day yesterday in The Hague, in Berlin and in Brussels with these crucial meetings. Today it's Prime Minister's questions. She's due to be in Ireland. I would imagine now this takes priority over all of that, doesn't it?
Well, I think one thing she can't avoid, because she is Prime Minister, is Prime Minister's questions. Now, that will be an interesting spectacle in itself, because obviously she's going to be facing criticism from the opposition, from Jeremy Corbyn, but also she'll be there in the knowledge that sitting behind her, allegedly on her own side, is at least 48 MPs who want her gone, and maybe many more. So, as I say, the most difficult speech of her political career will be to MPs tonight ahead of that crucial confidence vote, but my goodness, it will not be easy at Prime Minister's questions either. Lots of people talk about her being resilient, well, she'll have to really draw on those reservoirs of resilience today. I don't know about the Leo Varadkar meeting as yet, but I would bet my bottom dollar that it will be postponed, just as the vote was on her deal, because I think it would be difficult to make a trip to Dublin and to address MPs to argue, to fight for your own job. So I imagine that's off. She can talk to them in any case at European Council in Brussels if she is successful tonight, but I think now inside there they'll be preparing a battle plan for the Prime Minister.
Much to think about. Ian Watson, thank you very much for the moment. Something tells me we'll be back with you very shortly, so don't go anywhere. It's Ian Watson, who's on Downing Street for us this morning.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, if you've just tuned in the last few minutes, the challenge to Theresa May's position comes into question after the required 48 letters have now been received to now have the no confidence vote, which will happen this evening. In the last few minutes, politicians have been tweeting their support for the Prime Minister. James Buckinghamshire said strongly support at Theresa May to continue as leader of the Conservatives and Prime Minister. Now is not the time for this distraction and even more uncertainty. We need to get behind the Prime Minister in the best interests of our country.
Jeremy Hunt also been on social media this morning saying he's backing the Prime Minister Theresa May. Being PM is the most difficult job and manageable right now, and the last thing the country needs is a damaging and long leadership contest. Brexit was never going to be easy, but she's the best person to make sure we actually leave the EU on March the 29th. And that touches really on what Ian Watson was saying as well from Downing Street, that one of the things that may well be in her favour is the chronology, because essentially, and we'll speak hopefully to Sir Graham Brady shortly, it may well take until the end of January to sort this out, and all these negotiations are ongoing, and there's the end of March deadline sort of looming large as well.
But this time tomorrow we will definitely know whether Theresa May will remain as the leader of the Conservative Party. It's 10 minutes past 8. Another big story breaking overnight. A manhunt is underway in Strasbourg after a gunman opened fire at a Christmas market, killing at least 3 people and injuring 12. The authorities have begun a terrorism investigation in the French city after an earlier police search uncovered a number of weapons at the suspect's home, including grenades. Well, let's get the very latest now from our Europe correspondent, Damien Grammaticus. I imagine it's been a very busy night for the police. Do we have any more information?
Yes, it was, because they sealed off this old historic central area in Strasbourg here when that attack happened about 8 o'clock last night. Everyone who was here at the Christmas market, thousands of people in bars and restaurants, they were all confined inside in a lockdown. That was lifted in the very early hours of the morning, so people have gone and back home from here. So public transport is running again this morning, but we do have hundreds of security personnel, police and soldiers now working in this city on this manhunt to try and find this individual who's identified as a 29-year-old local man from Strasbourg who exchanged fire at least twice with the security forces last night. It's thought he was wounded in the left arm before he jumped in a taxi and then disappeared. And so that hunt is continuing, and people here told to remain vigilant as they go about their business today.
Damien, thank you very much. That's Damien Grammaticus for us in Strasbourg this morning.
I will continue to bring you any developments on the news that there have been the threshold reached for 48 letters for there to be a leadership challenge to Prime Minister Theresa May.
Yes, and that is a vote which will be happening this evening between 6 and 8. Theresa May will also be making a statement at 8:30, so we will bring you that. She will be live outside number 10, where she will be giving us a statement on this vote, which will be happening this evening, this vote of no confidence. 48 letters calling for a contest were delivered to Sir Graham Brady, so the vote will happen tonight. We will have the result tonight and find out whether Theresa May will remain as the leader.
Yeah, it's a huge day for the Prime Minister because, as Ian Watson was spelling out for us earlier, if she doesn't get the support of 50% of her party, that's it. Job over.
Yeah.
And the Conservative Party will be looking for a new leader and a new Prime Minister.
However, if she does get the support, then she will remain as leader and they won't be able to challenge that again for a year.
So we'll hear hopefully from the Prime Minister herself at 8:30. We'll bring you that live on BBC Breakfast. We're still going to hopefully speak to Ian Duncan-Smith, and we're chasing Sir Graham Brady as well, who is the chairman of the 1922 committee. And he's the man who everyone has been looking at for the last sort of 24 hours or so to see whether that announcement would come.
Yes, he is the one who's been getting the post and getting those letters. Here's Carol now with a look at this morning's weather. Morning, Carol.
Good morning, everyone. Well, there's lots going on with the weather for the next few days. It's going to be windy for the next few days in the west, especially with exposure. And by the time we get to overnight Friday into Saturday, some of us will be seeing some snow. But today, for many, it's a cloudy picture. In the east, though, first thing, where we've had clear skies by night, there's a touch of frost around. You've got brighter skies. And those brighter skies will extend across much of England, East Wales, by the time we get into the afternoon. But we also have a weak weather front draped across Western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, might just clip northwest England at times, and also West Wales. It's producing some fairly light rain, but don't forget, very windy here. Temperatures as a result are in double figures, whereas for the rest of us, they're more or less where they should be at this stage in December. Now, through this evening and overnight, under clear skies, there will be more of a frost than there was in the night just gone. We'll also have our weak weather front in the west still producing some rain, but then another one comes in from the southwest introducing some heavier bursts of rain. It's going to be a cold night, whichever way you look at it. So through the course of tomorrow, while we start off with variable amounts of cloud, we'll see sunshine develop through the day. Still our weather front producing some spots of rain across the Channel Islands, Isles of Scilly, Cornwall, parts of Wales for a time, Northern Ireland and the Outer Hebrides. Still windy in the west, but it's also going to be windy inland tomorrow. So on your thermometer you might see 6, 7s and 8s as the maximum temperature, but if you're in the wind, well, it's going to feel much colder than that, closer to freezing or possibly a little bit less. That leads us into Friday. So Friday also starts off on a cold, frosty note. There will be areas of cloud, but equally there'll be areas of sunshine. Some wintry showers scooting up the coastline there. And then we've got this rain still with us, pepping up, if anything, out towards the west. Now, these are our maximum temperatures. So we're looking at 3s or 4s through the middle of the afternoon. By the time we get to the middle of the night, they're going to be much lower than that. So what's going to happen overnight Friday into Saturday is all this rain is going to be pushing eastwards, bumping into this cold air and readily turning to snow, and not just on the hills. So you can see that quite nicely in the pressure chart. Still windy in the northwest. Here comes the rain and the snow. There's the snow just ahead of that band of rain. We'll see significant snow in the hills of Scotland and northern England, but we could see some line snow first thing on Saturday morning at lower levels. Transient snow, that is, across England and also Wales, because we've got this next big lump of rain coming our way. That too could prove to be problematic in that it may well lead to some localised flooding. So a lot going on with the weather at the moment. Dan and Steph.
Carol, thank you very much.
It's 16 minutes past 8. It's very much one of those programmes, a movable feast for you this morning on BBC Breakfast. Things are changing minute by minute, and the reason for this is that around about 7:40 today we've got confirmation that Sir Graham Brady, he is the chairman of the 1922 committee in the Conservative Party, and the news which we had been expecting, there had been rumours overnight that there will be a leadership challenge to Theresa May, who's currently Prime Minister, but today, Steph, could be the day where everything changes.
Yes, because we've had a confirmation from, as Dan was saying, Sir Graham Brady, who says the threshold of 15% of the Parliamentary Party seeking a vote of confidence in the leader of the Conservative Party has been exceeded. So because of this, in accordance with the rules, there will be a vote held, a secret vote held tonight between 6 and 8. That will be held in the House of Commons. Then shortly after that, the votes will be counted and an announcement will be made as soon as possible this evening. So we will find out tonight whether Theresa May will remain as leader. So that secret ballot, it needs to be support of more than 50% of her party in order to stay in that position. If she doesn't get that, then she will have to leave as the leader. They will be then looking for another one. And then we've got a lot of questions about what happens after that.
We're talking about the man who's received all those letters of no confidence. He is, of course, Sir Graham Brady. I think, Steph, we're able to speak to him this morning.
Yes. Good morning, Sir Graham.
Good morning.
So can you bring us up to speed? What exactly is happening? I've just read out your press release. What happens now?
What happens now, given that the threshold was reached during the course of yesterday, calling for a confidence vote to take place, it was then my responsibility to talk to the Prime Minister, which I did on the telephone last night, to consult her on how the process should be ordered and what the timetable for that might be. She was very keen that matters be resolved as quickly as is reasonably possible, which is very much in accordance with the party's rules. So we made the announcement early this morning. The Prime Minister will come and address Conservative colleagues at the 1922 committee meeting at 5 o'clock this afternoon, and immediately after that meeting a ballot will be held between 6 and 8 o'clock, and we will count as soon as we can and provide a result as soon as we can after that. So obviously with the intention of providing some clarity as quickly as is possible.
And can you just explain to us again the number of votes the Prime Minister would need in order to stay as leader?
It's a straightforward majority. 50% plus 1 is sufficient in the rules. It is a straightforward choice. Either colleagues say they have confidence in Theresa May as leader of the Conservative Party, or they do not have confidence in Theresa May as leader of the Conservative Party. And obviously colleagues will all be thinking that through during the course of today.
And if she does get the backing of the party, what happens then?
If she gets the backing of the party in this evening's vote, then there is a moratorium. No further vote of confidence could take place for a full 12-month period.
You obviously spoke to the Prime Minister last night. What was her mood like? It's obviously a very stressful time for her at the moment.
I don't want to be drawn in detail on a private conversation, but I think you can draw from the fact that she was keen to move ahead swiftly, to resolve matters. I think she was keen to get on with her job and get on with the business of government, and clearly having massive speculation about whether or not there would be a confidence vote was unhelpful, and also having a protracted period between the announcement that a vote would take place and that vote taking place would have been a very difficult time and not conducive to getting on with the job. So I think it's entirely in keeping, I have to say, that she was keen to proceed swiftly and get matters resolved.
If the Prime Minister doesn't get the backing of her majority of her party, there will then obviously be a leadership contest. What are the timelines for that?
That I can't be quite so specific about. It is the case that if a leader of the party loses a confidence vote, we then would proceed to a leadership election to choose a new leader of the party. The Prime Minister would remain Prime Minister in the meantime, but the timetable and the rules would have to be decided by the 1922 Executive Committee and approved by the board of the Conservative Party. Obviously we would seek to settle all of that as quickly as possible should the need arise. Parliamentary stages where we try to whittle it down to 2 candidates can be conducted very quickly, but then conducting a postal ballot of members in the country inevitably would take a little longer.
Given the uncertainty we're in at the moment with Brexit, is this the right time for a leadership contest? You know, we heard David Gauke saying earlier it's reckless to have a leadership contest now.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get lots of my colleagues quite rightly commenting from their own perspective during the course of today. I think in my position, now that a process has been triggered, I've got to be scrupulously independent and neutral. So I'm the servant of my colleagues and the constitution of the Conservative Party. The rules as they are written require that a confidence vote now be held. We will do that as efficiently and smoothly and swiftly as we can. My principal responsibility is to make sure that process is scrupulously fair and properly conducted.
I appreciate your role in this, but aren't you a bit embarrassed, though, by the state of British politics at the moment?
Well, I may well come on your show on another occasion, on a day when I don't have an election or a ballot to run, when I could possibly expand on my own views about the state of British politics, and I might have some sympathy with some of your observations. But today, I don't think it would be right for me to get drawn into that kind of commentary. I've got a very specific job to do, and you know, I think the most important, the only important thing, is that I make sure it is done fairly and properly.
Sir Graham Brady, thank you very much for your time this morning. I appreciate that. Sir Graham.
Or even other measures taken to try to prevent this, if there should have been signals that would have given signs of what he was maybe thinking of doing.
OK, Damien, you raced to Strasbourg from Brussels, I think, in the last few hours, where you were covering Theresa May's, the British Prime Minister's visit. She went to see various European leaders, trying to get some concessions from Europe. You will have heard, obviously, that a vote of no confidence has been triggered in her now. How will Europe respond to that? Because yet more uncertainty as the whole Brexit process is concerned.
Tim, yes, that's right. We were in Brussels yesterday covering Theresa May's visit. She was there meeting EU leaders when we heard about this attack. So we came here to cover this story in Strasbourg, and Theresa May headed back to the UK. So as you say, this morning that news of the leadership challenge, I think, will be a real concern for European leaders. They have spent, remember, more than a year now negotiating with Mrs May and her government this Brexit deal that is on the table to work out the UK's exit from the EU. Now, the concern will be that this leadership challenge throws everything up in the air. The question will be, if Mrs May is ousted as leader, what happens to that agreement that's on the table? It's largely shaped by her and her the things that she wanted to see, the red lines she had in that negotiation. So what will happen if there would be a different leader? Those are going to be serious questions on the EU side that they won't know now for quite some time. In the meantime, we're heading towards that deadline in March when the UK is due to leave the EU, and there needs to be, from the EU's point, an agreement in place to lock down all the legal and technical aspects of that. In the meantime, the EU has many other things, like what we're seeing here, security, terrorism, migration, on its agenda that it really wants to be focusing on, and it wants to get the Brexit deal sorted out in time. So I think this will be an unwelcome news from the EU's point of view, with all of these other things that the Europe wants to focus its energies on doing.
Damien, stay with us. You are watching BBC News, where we are joined by viewers of the BBC News channel for our extended coverage of the news in the last hour that Theresa May will be facing a leadership challenge. 48 members of her party have written to Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, to trigger that vote of no confidence. If she survives, then no one would be able to challenge her internally for a year, and I think it's a year and 1 day. If she were to go, though, if she were to lose, if she were to step down, there would be a leadership contest within her party. I think we were going to go back to Damien Grammaticus, who's in Strasbourg. He went to Strasbourg following the shooting there last night, but in fact, no, we're not, because this is the scene live in Downing Street, which we've just lost, but a lectern, live TV with breaking news, it's not always the easiest thing, but basically a lectern has been put there, so we're expecting some sort of statement, obviously, from Downing Street. I'm told that Damien Grammaticus is still with us. We can go back to Damien there now. Damien, you were in Brussels yesterday, Theresa May trying to rally support, or trying to get some sort of concessions, but do we know what she was specifically asking European leaders to offer her to be able to try and avoid what is happening now in Downing Street and to try and get her Brexit deal through?
We do, Tim, because what she said in Brussels, what we heard her say before we left there, was that she came out after her meetings with the EU leaders and said that she was seeking a legal reassurance or a legal commitment to ensure that the most contentious measure in all of the Brexit agreements that are on the table, the measure to do with Northern Ireland and ways to ensure that there are no new land border controls there. She wants a commitment to ensure that that would not be permanent if that ever came into force. Now, that's because the big problem she has at home in Parliament with her own MPs and others is that they do not like what they see in that withdrawal agreement, because they think it locks the UK into arrangements with the EU, potentially in perpetuity, and that is the measure that she was trying to get changes made to. But the EU leaders' point of view was, first of all, I think that these measures had to be in there and had to be there to protect the peace process in Ireland. But secondly, that this text has been in the making for a year. It's taken a huge amount of negotiation and give and take on both sides to lock it down, and they didn't want to reopen it. Part of the reason for that as well, I think, is that they have spent so much time and energy on this. They now want to get this deal through. Their concern was that Theresa May coming back to Brussels, touring European capitals, asking for new concessions, they would not want to be reopening it and opening up a whole new set of negotiations at this stage. The issue for EU leaders is trying to secure the withdrawal deal in time. They want that all sorted out. So now I think everything is on hold until we know the outcome of the leadership challenge in London.
Damien Grammaticus in Strasbourg, thank you very much indeed. So the British government in a state of yet more crisis. That leadership challenge will be held this evening at 6 o'clock local time, 6 till 8 p.m. 48 letters have been sent to Sir Graham Brady, chairman of the 1922 committee, as it's known here in Great Britain, really the governing body of the Tory party. 48 letters needed to trigger that no confidence vote. She needs a majority, though, of 158 to vote for her this evening to survive that, and if indeed she does survive that, then she would not be challenged for another year. You're looking at these live pictures of Downing Street. The lectern has been put there. Some very famous memories, of course, of that lectern in the last few years. In fact, David Cameron, who came out and gave a statement announcing that he was standing down the predecessor to Theresa May, who in the end got the leadership of the Tory party unchallenged as the various contenders were whittled down. Also a statement a few years ago by Gordon Brown, having lost the election. So a moment of great drama, a moment of great crisis here for the British government, as once again a Prime Minister comes, or is due to come, to the podium here in Downing Street to make a statement. What will she say? She's always, in the past, said that she would fight a leadership challenge. If she only won a vote of no confidence by one vote, she would continue. But bear in mind also that in the past few days she said she would hold that meaningful vote in the House of Commons scheduled for yesterday, Tuesday, but in the end, at the last minute, she withdrew after 5 days of debate because the numbers were overwhelmingly stacked against her. And talking about numbers, Sally Bundock, our business presenter, alongside me now as we wait for the statement by Theresa May. Sally, market reaction to, well, the latest crisis in this whole Brexit
Well, for financial markets in London, of course, we first heard that this vote of no confidence was coming later today at 10 minutes to 8. The London markets start to begin their day at 8 o'clock. So in the last half an hour, we haven't seen a huge reaction. And I think that is because mainly this has already been priced in. There's been conversations and speculation about a possible vote of no confidence for the last sort of 24 hours. So in that time, any negativity has been priced into financial markets. The one to watch today is the FTSE 250. This is the broader index trading in London, and that's the most the index that's most exposed to the domestic economy. So British companies that rely on the British economy to do well, whereas the FTSE 100 is a very global index. So we're watching the FTSE 250 at the moment. It's pretty flat. It's up just slightly. The pound versus the euro is down just slightly, not a big swing in any direction, and the pound is up versus the dollar just a little. But then the pound has been hammered in the last 24 hours, let's not forget. So this is coming from a low base. But very, very sensitive. But I would imagine today, because of course, as you've mentioned, this vote of no confidence takes place between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. This evening. And of course, trading in London finishes at 4:30 this afternoon. So today, investors, traders, stock market watchers, etc., they'll be treading water, really, because you don't know which direction to go in today.
No, we don't. But I mean, you know, in the past, dire warnings of the consequences of Brexit immediately after the referendum. Also, dire warnings from Mark Carney, the Governor of the Bank of England, recently about the effects of a hard Brexit. Is that backed up by the business leaders you're speaking to, if there were a hard no-deal Brexit?
Well, in terms of their expectations, as I've mentioned before, all the business leaders I talk to, CEOs of companies, the heads of organisations like the Institute of Directors, the Confederation of British Industry, are all warning that a hard Brexit for business, in their view, for the UK economy, is the worst outcome. And they want business as usual, so something as close to our current relationship with the European Union. That is the view of most business leaders. There are others out there who are pushing for Brexit. For example, the chief executive of JD Wetherspoon, for example, and others who have put themselves out there to say, actually, we don't feel that way. But the vast majority of business leaders and organisations such as the CBI, the Small Business Federation, etc., they're all saying, we want frictionless trade. We want things to remain as close as possible to as what they are now.
Worth pointing out, Sally, though, that the consequences of a no-deal Brexit are pretty serious for Europe as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've talked to company leaders, CEOs of companies who are European, who are based in France, in Germany, and some of the key economies in Europe. And yes, they are very concerned about what this means for them as well, because, of course, we export a lot to Europe, we import a lot from Europe. It's not just finished goods, it's components, it's parts, it's the supply chain. And these supply chains are extremely complicated and have been in place for decades, where there's been a free flow of goods and services across all these borders for such a long time. So for companies based in Europe and in the United Kingdom, this level of uncertainty that they have experienced since the referendum of June 2016 has been one of the key problems for them. But now they're in a period of time where March 29th,
2019 is not far away at all. And companies who rely on the export-import of goods, they're making decisions now that will affect them for the next 6 to 9 months. They have to make investment decisions, expenditure decisions, how many goods they're going to stock, or inventory decisions. All that kind of process is always 6 to 9 months ahead. So they're now in a period now where they have planned for probably the worst case scenario in many cases.
But the immediate concern now for business leaders, for politicians, for Europe, for the world actually, is what is going to happen to Theresa May, the British Prime Minister. If you are just joining us, this is the scene live at Downing Street. Lectern has been put up there in front of that famous black door at number 10. We are expecting a statement from Theresa May, the Prime Minister, well, we're not quite sure when, but presumably imminently, since the lectern has been erected there. It follows the news in the last hour that Tory MPs have triggered a vote of no confidence in their leader. 48 letters written to Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, as it's known, the governing body, really, the House party with the House rules of the Tory party. Sir Graham Brady, having received 48 letters, which means that a leadership contest and a vote of no confidence could be triggered, well, the vote of no confidence will be triggered at 6 o'clock this evening. So all of this happening very, very quickly indeed, and this in the middle of Theresa May's attempts to try and get some sort of concessions from Europe over her Brexit deal. But as she travelled around Brussels and met European leaders yesterday, the doors were resolutely closed. In fact, literally so when it came to Angela Merkel's meeting with Theresa May. Theresa May going for lunch with the German Chancellor. Her back door of her limousine temporarily jammed, so she couldn't even get out of the car for a few moments to see the German Chancellor. A moment of great crisis, a moment of great drama, in the middle of a moment of great upheaval as Britain tries to heal itself and forge together some sort of consensus over the Brexit deal following that referendum 2 years ago. So this is the scene live at number 10, just a few hundred metres away near the Palace of Westminster at College Green is my colleague Joanna Gosling, who is there for us live. Joanna, over to you. What a morning.
What a morning indeed, Tim. And the atmosphere here continues to build. The number of people wandering around, excited at the prospect of the day unfolding, as obviously this is a leadership contest that has been speculated around for a long time. Even last night, when it was being said that the 48 letters had gone into Graham Brady, there were some saying we've been here before, but maybe let's just wait and see. But this morning it was confirmed that those letters had gone in, and I say the word excitement in the sense of it is a dramatic political story and nobody knows where the day will end. There is the door at number 10, and we are expecting the Prime Minister to emerge any moment to make a statement. Graham Brady saying earlier that when he spoke to her last night, she was keen to crack on with the protest. The process said it was typical that she wants to be able to get back on with the business of government, and further speculation and time being taken around this stops her in the business of getting on with the job in hand. So we'll stay across those pictures, and let me bring in for a conversation here Owen Paterson, the former Environment Secretary. He was among those last night saying that Theresa May had to go. He said she had failed to prepare for a no-deal Brexit, tried to bounce her ministers into supporting her, and approached negotiations like a feeble and unworthy supplicant. Well, Owen Paterson, we're waiting to hear from the Prime Minister. You want her to go?
Morning. Yes, sadly, it's taken me a long time, very reluctantly, to write this letter, but I'm afraid she's not the person to see Brexit through. We have clear manifesto commitments. We promised the British people that we would honour the Leave vote, 70.4 million, biggest vote in British history, by leaving the single market, leaving the customs union, leaving the remit of ECJ. And her deal is absolutely appalling. We don't leave the customs union. I was in Washington recently. We won't be able to do trade deals. And the backstop is completely unacceptable, and it's quite unnecessary. We do not have to hive off part of the United Kingdom into something new called UKNI in complete breach of the Belfast Agreement. When I've been to Rotterdam, I've talked to Dutch experts, I've introduced them to Monsieur Barnier, I've had meetings with the Prime Minister, I've had meetings with her senior civil servants, and I've really tried to get them to see that we have technical solutions. Nothing new, nothing revolutionary, it's the existing processes could solve this, and yet on Monday I asked her in the Commons and she's still talking about the backstop.
A new leader at this stage will change nothing, will they? In fact, it takes us closer to the two extremes, which are a no-deal Brexit or no Brexit.
Well, no, at the moment she's on track to try to get some concessions, which were, and the Europeans were
but it's clear that
being
they're
very
not
difficult with
happen.
them. They're not going to give them. So she's stuck with this deal, which is not going to get through the House of Commons.
But isn't any successor to Theresa May also stuck with that deal?
No, you drop it completely. That's why we should have had a vote on Tuesday and gone back to the Europeans and said, look, this deal is totally unacceptable. It's a total breach of our democracy to have law imposed upon us by people where we're not even in the room, where we'll have fines imposed upon us by the ECJ. No, we should go back to Tusk's offer of March the 7th of a big, wide-ranging free trade deal. Do that immediately. When I saw Monsieur Barnier, that was still very much on the table. And then, in parallel, prepare for what you call no deal, I call world trade terms. Now, that has been caricatured, hang on, very important this, it's been caricatured at the moment as leaping off a cliff, catastrophe. It's utter nonsense. Keep asking the questions on world trade terms. 164 countries handle 98% of world trade.
Theresa May's balancing act has been balancing the result that the country put forward and the knowledge that there is no majority in the Commons for the sort of thing that you are talking about. That's not going to change. The numbers don't change with a new leader.
Yes, and I think that was the basis of her failure, because there was a very clear mandate of the general election. It wasn't just us.
It wouldn't have got through Parliament.
No, hang on. It was not just the Tory party that stood on the platform leaving single market customs union and the ECJ. The Labour Party did. 85% of the votes in the election for parties that wanted to honour that vote. And with the DUP, we have a majority, and that should have been done. What the mistake has been to try to triangulate, to somehow come up with a botched compromise. And that is never going to work, and we've ended up with this muddle we're in now.
So to drop the deal completely, does the whole process have to be delayed?
No, exactly what I said. Go back, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, go back to Monsieur Barnier. When I saw him, it was very clear that the Tusk offer was still there. Say, yes, we'll take up the Tusk offer, which founded on the Northern Ireland border. We have a solution to the Northern Ireland border using existing techniques. And in parallel, you begin immediately to prepare for world trade terms, because obviously you won't get a free trade deal through by March the 29th.
What's the solution to the Northern Ireland border?
Oh, I wrote a paper with
well, in a
experts.
nutshell, because everyone knows what the problem is, and it's been befuddling this process for months and months and months. So if there's a simple